Hi guys, and welcome to Global Film Pool. This is the YouTube channel that looks at the best of world cinema and the race for the best international feature film Oscar. Today we're going to look at the films that were announced for the Cannes 2024 lineup and which could be contenders for the best international feature film this year. So now Cannes is a huge indicator for who's in the running for this particular Oscar. So if we take last year, just in the competition category, we had a total of 7 submissions that took part in the competition, which 5 got prizes. And this does not include the eventual Palme d'Or winning Anatomy of a Fall. So Cannes is essential in finding some of the frontrunners for the top prize of Best International Feature Film Oscar. We know very little about the content of the films that were announced in the Cannes lineup this year. So there's a caveat. We don't know things around language proportions and whether they're eligible for the Oscar. We don't know the quality yet. Some might have really terrible reviews and countries may not be willing to put them forward. And we don't know who else is in the race and whether there's political elements in some of the selections. So I've gone through the films that were announced and identified a total of 13 that could be in contention. Now, obviously, there are other films that could be part of the Oscar race, but because there's quite a number from individual countries such as France or China, it's very hard to determine yet who could be involved. So if we take the films that are in competition, these are the ones I've identified as potential Best International Feature Film submitted films. So first, let's look at India. So this is a feature directorial debut from a director who has predominantly done documentaries, and it is the first Indian film to make the in-competition Cannes lineup since 1983's Kaji, which suggests that this is an attempt by an Indian filmmaker to make the quality of film that could be in contention for the Oscar. India has had a poor track record recently in the Oscars. They've only ever had 3 nominated films, which the last one was Lagan, which was in the early noughties, and a couple of years ago, the last Best Picture got to the submission and shortlisting stage. The film I imagine, would be in the Hindi or Bengali languages, which suggests its politics may not necessarily play a part. However, we will wait and see on the content and what other films come out of India. But I imagine India are really keen to get something that can fit in a sort of Western art house gaze, as well as remain true to Indian culture that goes beyond the sort of Bollywood model. Next is Jacques Audiard's Emilia Perez. This is a film predominantly set in Mexico and spoken in Spanish, and is meant to be a crime-orientated musical. So it sounds a bit sort of unique. Audiard has previously had a film submitted, A Prophet, which got a nomination, and he has won the Palme d'Or for Deepan before. So he generally brings quality, and this could potentially be a submission. It could be a submission for France because of the director's nationality, or because it's set in Mexico and quite a Mexican production. It could be Mexico's. France has set a musical before for the Oscars in 8 Women, which was crime orientated. So it's got form in doing that. However, I could see this potentially being more of a Mexican submission because there is the less competition in the selection process. However, we will wait and see. Next, we have Portugal. Now, Portugal has one of the worst performances from a major film producing country. It's had the most submissions without actually getting to the shortlisting or nomination phase of the Best International Feature Film race. And Miguel Gomez, who's had a couple of films submitted on behalf of Portugal, such as the second installment of the Arabian Nights trilogy, which is absolutely fantastic, has put forward Grand Tour for the in competition category at Cannes. If this receives great reviews and it's got a sort of black and white cinematography, there is a great chance this could do well and potentially breaks Portugal's performance in the Academy Awards. He has a sort of surrealist satire to his films, and whether it's a bit too surreal for the Academy, I don't know. We will wait and see on the contents. But Miguel Gomez is probably putting Portugal in a good position by just having a film in competition. Karim Inu's Motel Destino is the only Brazilian film in the in competition category and is the frontrunner to be Brazil's submission. He had previously submitted The Invisible Life of Eurydice Gusmão, which was an extraordinarily good film, but didn't actually get past the submission process. So this, depending on the quality of it, could be Brazil's frontrunner for their submission. Paolo Sorrentino has been one of the most successful Italian director of recent years in the Oscar race. And he has returned with Parthenope. His previous films that have been submitted has won the Academy Award for The Great Beauty, but also got a nomination, The Hand of God, which I wasn't particularly that keen on, but he seems to be doing quite well. So if this receives great reviews in Cannes, it could be a huge frontrunner for both Italy's selection, which is not necessarily guaranteed because Italy always produce great depth, but also a frontrunner for the Best International Feature Film Oscar, providing Italy to continue their run of form of recent years. The final film of the in-competition films that I wanted to touch upon was Magnus von Horn's The Girl with the Needle. Now, this is set in Denmark and looks a beautiful black and white film. The director himself is Swedish, but has trained and lives in Poland. And I think there's a sort of co-production arrangement in this. And while Denmark would make the most sense because it is a Danish set film, it could also be eligible for Sweden and even Poland if they have played a significant role in the production of the film. So it's very open to who could actually submit it. The director has done previous films such as The Hereafter and Sweat, which will all be very good, but he's never actually had a film that's been in contention for the Oscar race. So this has the potential to do that if it receives the sort of accolades and reviews from Cannes in particular. Now let's move on to Un Certain Regard films. First is actually Norway. Halfdan Olmen Tondal has a film called Armand, which I think the main link is it stars the star of The Worst Person in the World, Renate Reinsve. This was Norway's last film to get nominated for Best International Feature Film. And again, it's slightly riding on the backtails of her performance from that. If it's of a film of a similar quality, this will be very much in the Oscar race. So we'll wait and see what the reviews are for this, but it's one to certainly highlight. Tafkin Al-Saidi is submitted a film called Nora for Saudi Arabia. Now, this is one of a recent trend of Saudi Arabia submitting, which is often female-centered films, which in part is a reflection of changes in Saudi Arabia, but also the image of the Saudi Arabian government want to project, whether that's sort of washing or hiding certain things that go on in Saudi Arabia is another issue. But it would be not a surprise if this was not put forward for Saudi Arabia's submission. It's a director that's never submitted a film before, and Saudi Arabia haven't particularly done anything in the actual Oscars itself. So, but this is one to look out. However, the reigning champions, I suppose, the UK, could potentially send Regina Naoni's On Becoming a Guinea Fowl. She's Welsh Zambian and has had a film previously submitted, I Am Not a Witch, which did quite well in Cannes and got good reviews, but it didn't do anything particularly in the Oscar race, but it was the UK submission. I think this is probably a very likely UK submission if it meets all the requirements, because the UK doesn't generally have a lot of films that are in contention of winning. Obviously, you get the Jonathan Glazers of the world, and that automatically, if it's not in English, gets put forward. But generally, they put forward smaller films, which are often first-time directors, and they don't particularly do well. We had a period in the 90s where the UK put forward Welsh language films, but there tends to be a lot more international films that are put forward that are done by British directors. And I think this is an opportunity to actually build on the success of The Zone of Interest, because she's an extraordinarily good director. And if this film follows that, it wouldn't necessarily win, but it could, for example, reach the shortlisting phase or even get a nomination. And then this creates momentum for the UK to continue the non-English language films within this Academy Award category. The one big caveat is it is based in Africa, the film. So there might be, for example, Zambia might also want to claim it as theirs. So we'll see if there's a sort of country battle to decide who puts it forward. But I would imagine the UK would be the one putting it forward just because of the strength of BAFTA. The Shameless by Konstantin Borjanov is a potential Bulgarian submission. Bulgaria haven't had much success in the awards for some time and have never won the Academy Award. The quality of their submissions is very varied, but they're usually very small films, as you would imagine. And I think something like being in the Un Certain Regard category at Cannes could really elevate this as Bulgaria's potential submission. The director has never submitted a film for the Oscars before, but has done film like Ave, which did okay in the European Film Awards selection. So it would not surprise me if this was not put forward as Bulgaria's submission. The final film from the Un Certain Regard competition at Cannes that I wanted to touch upon is Viet Nam by Trong Minh Quay, which would be the favourite to be Vietnam's submission, I would imagine, just because of the elevated category of being in Cannes and the Un Certain Regard competition. Occasionally, Vietnam puts forward some sort of Netflix quality uninspired film instead of the high art of Cannes. But I would hope if Vietnam was serious about doing something in the Academy Awards, this would probably be the one because of the prestige of the award itself. The final two films I wanted to pick up are in the premiere category of Cannes. The first is from Morocco, Nabil Ayouch for Everybody Loves Touda. The director has had previous Moroccan submissions such as Razia and Casablanca Beats, and is a sort of quality name that is constantly put forward for Morocco's submission when he has done one of a decent quality. I imagine this premiere at Cannes would add to his chances, and this pretty much ensures a good chance for Morocco's submission, I would say. And now the final one I wanted to pick up was for Cambodia, Rithi Panar's Rendezvous avec Pot Pau. The director is predominantly deals with documentary, but has done feature films as well. His Rice People was the first Cambodian submission ever, and he also achieved Cambodia's first nomination for the claymation documentary The Missing People. I think it's a pretty surefire bet that if he has a film out at Cannes, it becomes Cambodia's submission, which is really helpful because Cambodia have not had a submission at the last year's Academy Awards. So it would be great to that they return to the competition with a sort of weighty name that generally has done them quite well in the Academy Awards. So they are the 13 films that I thought I would highlight as potential country submissions. Just a reminder that, it's early doors yet. We've still got a huge amount of time before countries start submitting and the selection process. So we haven't even got the rules yet for the Academy Awards Best International Feature Film. So there may be sort of certain films coming up with other festivals, etc. However, this is just a first glimpse of what could be involved in the race. If you're interested in world cinema and the Best International Feature Film Academy Award race, then please do subscribe and catch more reviews and analysis on this channel. See you later.